disease within the body can lead to disease within the body. Low-level chronic stress will lead to some serious chronic illnesses, autoimmune diseases, cancers. So what do we need to do?
I wanted to move on to Peru.
Men struggle to connect to themselves. They struggle to connect to other men, and it's not healthy. We need connection with people for one thing, but men need connection with other men in a really profound way. This retreat allowed us as men to just drop these masks and drop into our bodies. It was hugely transformative for me. The connection to myself, men, and allowing me to hold space.
Holding space is something that a lot of people find difficult.
Fundamentally, what we're all seeking is connection, to be heard, to be seen, to feel the connection. And if we don't feel connected, we're going to be dysregulated.
If we listen to our body and we listen to our heart, it will lead us to find out what that is that we want to do. And as we get into this calm parasympathetic state, it will lead us to a calmer, more purposeful life.
Once the nervous system is regulated or down-regulating, my subconscious mind is able to be accessed more regularly than my prefrontal cortex of my thinking mind, my conscious mind. So spiritually, it will allow us to tap into what's internal, what's inside, and whether that's our truth, our purpose, our soul, and that can only be a wonderful thing.
Hey, beautiful soul. Yes, you. You are beautiful, whether you identify as female, male, trans, alien, fairy, witch, human, daughter, son, mother, sister, brother, grandpa, grandma. You are beautiful, and don't you ever forget to be you to the full. Thank you so much for stopping by and clicking on this episode. It has called you for a reason, and that is because it matches your frequency and your vibration, and there is a message in it for you. Before every episode, I sit in meditation and I ask for those who are meant to benefit from my conversations be guided to it. If you resonate with this episode, please subscribe, like, comment below, and even better, share this episode with another being. Now, when we share our information, it helps to bring consciousness to as many beings as possible. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for spending your time here and working on yourself to find out who you are so that you can shine your light for others and help the consciousness of the planet. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, today we welcome Dr. James Lambert, who has a doctorate in physical therapy or physio in the UK, a qualified yoga teacher with over 500 hours training and breathwork facilitator. He has created and founded Breath Mobility, which is designed to guide and educate people on how to use the breath to help regulate their nervous system. And by integrating this, it allows the musculoskeletal system to open and in turn improve mobility, function, and better overall health. James, thank you so much for coming on today and welcome to the Purpose Search podcast.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm very happy to be here. I'm honored to be a guest on your podcast. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Well,
Looking
thank
forward to the
you.
conversation.
Yeah, me too. And if you are new to the podcast here today, every episode I start with a short breath exercise to drop into the body and get present with the conversation as we're coming onto screen or we're listening through our ears. So today, as we have the expert in breathwork, I thought it would be most appropriate if I could invite you, James, to lead us in a short breathwork exercise now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I'll be happy to lead us and ground into this conversation. So what we'll do, we'll begin by just gently drawing the eyes down if it's comfortable for you. If not, just taking a soft gaze in front is fine. And we're going to focus breathing in and out through the nose for this short practice. And just allowing the breath to come in through the nostrils, feeling the air travel through the back of the throat and down to the base of the lungs, perhaps feeling the belly rise, the ribs expand in all directions, forwards, backwards, sideways. And then just a gentle exhale back up through the nostrils. And just taking a moment to feel the connection from the ground, feeling that support through the feet, your toes, and just noticing any sensations that you feel moving up through the feet, through the legs, feeling the support, the connection on your sit bones, feeling held, and then moving up through the spine, up to the crown of your head, the top of the head. And just imagine a balloon attached to the crown of your head, just gently pulling on the string. So the head and the spine is elongating with a gentle nod of the chin towards the heart. And as you breathe in through the nose, I'm going to just allow the exhale to elongate and just be a little bit longer than the inhale. And then as you begin to lengthen the exhale, just gently yielding and pulling the belly button towards the spine, just with a gentle muscular contraction, just engaging the core and feeling that connection again through the sit bones, the spine, coming up through to the crown of the head. And perhaps we'll take 3 more breaths together, just in and out through the nose. And then on the last exhale, just taking any subtle movements with the hands. And then when it feels comfortable, just softly opening the eyes, taking in the space around you, and coming back to screen when you're ready.
Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Every time I start my podcast, I will ask my guest what their zodiac star sign is and what their human design energy type is, because we are called the Purpose Search podcast. So, can you tell us what your star sign is?
I am Cancerian, a Cancer born in July 16th.
Yeah, very close to me. I'm a Cancer too, and you're also a Leo rising, and your moon sign is you are Aries. So lots of fire there.
Mm. That I can acknowledge that, I think, in certain regards. Yeah.
And also your human design type. So you're a generator, 3-5, emotional authority, and your life incarnation cross. Do you know this?
Not as much as you do, I think.
Your life incarnation cross is the right angle cross of Maya 2, with the gifts 62, 61, 42, and 32. And the life's purpose is to pay attention to the finer details, which I think, with what you do and what you're so gifted at doing and sharing with the world, I think is very on point and alignment.
I think there's a strong connection there, yeah, for sure. Yes.
So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about where this all started really for you and how you got into this. Um, I know the story, but the listeners don't. So I think that would be a great place to start.
I think it probably started for me when I came back from traveling to South Africa, Australia, and Thailand for 16 months when I was 23, I think, at the time. And I was going for an interview for a job in central London, and I fell and fractured my left elbow on the train platform. And I've never felt pain like that before in my life. And subsequently, I needed surgery, which I had the following day. And I was off work and I was having physio with my physiotherapist at the time. And it just all stemmed from there. Essentially, I was amazed at what she did for me, my progress, my rehab, and how much function I returned from having a very broken wing. And then I moved to London. I worked as a physio assistant at Guy's and Tommy's NHS Trust and studied biology A level part time. Got into university at the University of East London and came out with a first class degree. And moved to Oxford, where I began my career as a junior physio. And it was around that time I made the decision to move to America. And then I emigrated out here in 2014 and began my career here. And I slowly began to move into training for triathlons. Um, and I did a couple of sprint Olympic triathlons. I enjoyed them. And I began training for an Ironman, which is a whole nother level of endurance that I wasn't used to. Um, and I developed a soft tissue injury, essentially, which stopped me from training. And at that point, I found yoga, which I dabbled with in very briefly back in Oxford a few years prior. But within the first class I went to at the studio where I live in Northern California, the yoga teacher shared with the class that there's a teacher training happening in a few weeks. And it just really piqued my interest. And I signed up for the teacher training. That was my first 200-hour. And one of the elements within that of one of the teachers, Kathy, she said to the students that you have to have a meditative practice of at least 20 minutes a day. And that was initially very challenging for me, but it pretty much changed my life. And I've meditated daily since then. And that has led me to breath work. We did various pranayama practices. Um, and then I did a 300-hour straight after that because the second teacher that came in was more alignment based. So she's a body worker. So for me as a physio, there was a lot of anatomy and it was alignment based. So it resonated for me. And then since then, which was I graduated from that second practice in 2020, and then COVID came along, and I continued to breathe and to meditate, and since then I've just developed my practice. I'm studying to be a breathwork facilitator at the moment. Halfway through my course, and I went on a retreat last year to Peru with a group of 25 strange men that I didn't know at the time. And part of the retreat, apart from hiking up Machu Picchu, which was incredible, we went through various practices together. And some of them were through a method of breathing called conscious connected breath, which essentially it just opened up another world for me. It was a very cathartic, a very emotional release that I found, and bonding with the men during that retreat, which was very profound for me. Honestly, Melissa, it's just been a natural evolution, and the dots are connecting from falling over and breaking my elbow to moving to America, to being injured, finding yoga, breathwork, meditation, and it's just continuing to evolve for me into my life's journey, essentially. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that experience and how literally one event, which was so quite drastic to fall over on a train station. Was it a train platform?
It was Bourne End train station in Buckinghamshire.
Wow,
I was wearing
that's
my
where
smart
everything
shoes.
unfolded for you.
Yep, it did. Yeah.
It's like, this
Uh,
was your life path and that's where it's going. I love it. Yeah, so that is just so magical how everything led to each step and all the dots led to that path. I think for me, that is definitely what's happened with me. And studying microbiology as my first degree, and then going into musical theatre, and then falling into different things, which is just so beautiful to see how that just unfolds, and hearing your story of that as well. I think s- coming up for me is I want to know what your take on is about modern science, and do you think that modern science still misunderstands the breath and the body, and what your take is on that?
so when I first went to university to do my physio degree in London, one of the first lectures, the teacher said to me, or us as a class, she said that physiotherapy is an art; it's not just a science, and that landed with me at the time because I was quite confused by that because I presumed that being a physiotherapist in healthcare is just purely science, medicine, any kind of medical profession. Um, and that stuck with me. And I now completely understand what she meant by that, um, primarily because it's taken me a number of years. I've been a physical therapist now for 22 years plus. But it took me several years to appreciate what she was saying and to begin to understand the human body, um, just in terms of its functionality, its anatomy, its physiology, but sort of pattern recognition as well. And I mean, now I cannot help whenever I see anyone walking in public is to diagnose what may be going on for them, what's weak, what's tight, what's unstable. Yeah, it's just who I am now. But relation to the question specifically, I do feel that the breath is this ancient technology that is misunderstood, essentially. It's the gateway to so many things that for me are fundamental in, for one, my daily practices, but my general health and well-being in a physical landscape, but also in a mental, psychological element as well. And I know breathwork has blown up hugely over the last perhaps decade. Um, I think Wim Hof has probably got a lot of attribution for that, which is one element, one pathway into it. But it's, mm, yeah, it's such a huge topic, and there's so many ways into breathing the body. But it's one thing that people can access at any point during the daytime, anywhere. No equipment needed. It's free. It's universal. It's accessible, and it's fundamental for regulating our nervous system, which influences our musculoskeletal system, how we feel, how we move, and generally the quality of our lives on a daily basis, not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically, mentally, how much attention we can have in our tasks. focus, alertness, memory to a certain extent. The research is just growing exponentially. Um, but then for me, there's the experiential elements of what I've felt and what I've experienced over the years through breathwork, meditation. But with my knowledge as a scientist, I suppose, as a physical therapist, it I'm able to perhaps understand it on one particular level, but then I can feel it and experience it on a very different level, like a very personal level.
Yeah, absolutely. And you speak a lot about the exhale being the key. And why do you believe that the exhale is so powerful for regulating the nervous system? Can you explain that in maybe layman's terms for people who don't really understand what
Mm.
parasympathetic state is and what that definition is?
Absolutely. So our autonomic nervous system has two branches. Has the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, which essentially controls and influences a lot of our functions: heartbeat, respiration, blood pressure, digestion, and the element of the sympathetic nervous system is that we are generally more in a fight or flight state of mind, awareness with everything that goes on a day-to-day basis. Um, and I know there's within the polyvagal theory, which has been maybe not debunked, but there's been some recent literature to maybe discount the polyvagal theory. And I won't go into that too much at this point, but um, essentially we're either in a fight or flight state or a rest and digest relax state. And with modern life today, generally we are usually in a sympathetic fight or flight or freeze, which is the polyvagal theory: fight, flight, or freeze, which I would suggest or argue that it's more of a negative state for us to be in. We need the sympathetic drive because historically, if we're being chased by a lion, we need to be able to run away from that lion. If there's fear, our body needs to respond appropriately. So there are elements of it being essential, needed, natural. But if we are in a sympathetic dominant state for longer periods of time, months, years, it can be an unhealthy thing. Disease within the body can lead to disease within the body. So what do we need to do? We need to engage a parasympathetic element of our nervous system to counteract this sympathetic dominance, to allow our muscles to relax, to allow our heart rate to relax, our blood pressure, to allow rest, digestion, which is essential for daily function in life and just general health and wellness. Um, and coming back to the exhale, particularly the vagal nerve, again, another term that has got a lot of exposure, I would suggest, more recently, for being an effective way, again, to target the parasympathetic nervous system. And the vagal nerve has many connections. It's actually the longest nerve within the body, and it has connections in various visceral organs, and the diaphragm being one of them. And focusing for me on the exhale has two main key components of why I particularly focus on the exhale. One being that engaging the diaphragm with the exhale, you're going to, or we are going to, I am going to increase something called like the vagal tone, which is just a term for how active and how strong and how responsive the vagus nerve can be to help influence our sympathetic nervous system to be more responsive. So again, there's something called heart rate variability, again, which is another term that's come about fairly recently. But it's essentially it's our ability of our body's nervous system to respond to that stress, to come into that fight or flight appropriately if we need to run for a bus or run away from a lion, um, and then respond in a healthy way to engage the parasympathetic nervous system into a more relaxed, healthier, regulated state. And it's regulation really that I feel we need to focus on a little bit more. Um, Nothing against Wim Hof and that method of breathing. I think for a lot of people, it is an effective practice for various reasons. And I practice it intermittently, but it's more of an activating breath. And I think as a society, we need more of a down regulating focus method of breathing, and using the exhale, particularly engaging the diaphragm, is going to engage that element, that parasympathetic nervous system, for a more relaxed state, physiologically as well as cognitively. But there's another element for me as a physio, particularly. The diaphragm is the top cylinder, if you could imagine like a Coke can or Pepsi, if that's your thing. And the
Pepsi.
diaphragm, Pepsi, okay. We'll come back to that.
Pepsi Max.
Um,
Not that I drink it much.
yeah, no, same. On occasions. I do quite like Dr. Pepper over here in California. It's quite nice. But the diaphragm is the top part of that Coke can, Pepsi can. And the base is the pelvic floor. And then obviously we wrap around the spine. So it's part of our core musculature. And I know the core, again, has become another buzzword over probably the last 2 decades, I suppose. But using the exhale, we will engage the core musculature to help support our spine. And it is a muscle. It has a large element of connective tissue, but it does have a muscular element to that. And just like any muscle, just like the heart, it needs training, it needs strengthening. And if we don't use it, it will weaken over time. Plus, focusing on the exhale, you're going to increase that neuromuscular drive. So again, use it or lose it. If we're not using it, we will lose the ability to contract the diaphragm, for one thing, which in turn will have a negative effect on your core strength. And it's no coincidence that I think it's been reported that 50% of people with low back pain have a dysfunctional pattern of breathing. And if you think about that, 50% of people with low back pain, which I've experienced in the past having low back pain, but if you think about that on a global scale, I mean, within America and the American healthcare system alone, I think low back pain is one of the highest economic burdens on the healthcare system. You're talking billions, if not trillions, of cost, but it's not necessarily a monetary value. It's the cost to us as individuals and the quality of our lives. If we're suffering from pain, we want help with that. We want to understand that. We want to move through that and change that. And even for me, I've come home from work on occasion. I've had a busy day. I've been stressed. And I know that I haven't breathed particularly well that day. And when we're in a sympathetic dominant state, we will use the upper portion of our lungs. We won't use the diaphragm. And again, what happens is the nervous system responds to that negatively. So the muscles essentially will tighten, they will contract. And again, I felt this because I've come home when I've felt stressed, tired, my back is hurting, my body is aching, and I've sat and I've breathed and I've shifted my physiological state from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state. And I would suggest, I don't know, 70 to 80% of the pain or the tension that I felt has dissipated, it's gone, because I'm breathing in a very different way. I'm engaging that diaphragm, and it's shifted my nervous system, my muscles have responded, and cognitively, mentally, I feel a lot more relaxed and at peace. This is a very long answer, I appreciate, but again, for me, the exhale is the fundamental element that I feel, and within my practice and my business and my model is to use the exhale as the key element to just help people have a better quality of life on a day-to-day basis.
And I think that you touched on something quite important there about the exhale being a way to regulate the parasympathetic state. And I essentially learnt this when I was going through my therapy practices and reading all my self-help books and learning that it was actually my therapist that told me that focus on the breath out, because if you're breathing out longer than you're breathing in, you will calm the nervous system down and regulate back to safety. Um, why do you think it is that many breathwork practices focus on activation then rather than the down regulation? And can you explain also what down regulation actually means so that people can understand it and feel it?
So down regulation for me is the ability of the nervous system and that vagus nerve to come out of that fight or flight response, that dominance that generally we experience the majority of our days, from getting up, catching the tube, driving a car, drinking coffee, tea. We're generally in a fight or flight state. Stress, money, society, worries, war, whatever it is, without being sort of negative. And the down regulation is using that breath to just slow down, essentially. If our nervous system is sympathetically driven, um, our digestion is not going to be as effective. Our food won't get digested as well. Our heart rate's going to elevate. Our blood pressure will elevate. Our cortisol levels are going to be sustained at a higher level than they should be. So add all of those elements together over a period of days, weeks, months, even years for some people. It's not a healthy place to be, because it can lead to disease, like chronic disease. And I know that Gabor Mate talks about low-level chronic stress will lead to some serious chronic illnesses. Again, not to talk negatively, but it can lead to serious illnesses, autoimmune diseases, cancers, all of these really unpleasant things that we don't want to experience for anyone, our families, or us as individuals. And the down regulation is important to try and minimize how likely those things are going to happen. But also, again, just so we can feel more regulated on a day-to-day basis. Because if our muscles are tight, we're going to be sore, we're going to possibly be in pain, our heart rate's going to be up, our concentration, we're just going to be generally in a stressed, uncomfortable state, more so than not, and more so than we should be or need to be. And yeah, using the exhale and slowing the breath down to a degree is I think, more beneficial than what a lot of breathwork modalities can tend to be, which is a more upregulating, a faster method of breathing. And I don't want to talk negatively about some of the practices, like I said, with Wim Hof, or even conscious connected breath, which again is another method of breathing taken from allotropic. But I think it's become quite sexy, again, with Wim Hof or these other methods of breathing, to use a quicker method of breathing, because it will very quickly shift our physiology and our biochemistry into a very different state that people, and I'm one of them, will experience a very different feeling and sensations and responses to this very quick shift in our biochemistry through breathing very, very quickly, like Wim Hof with a breath hold. And I think people get, I won't say addicted, but they get very attracted to the want and the need for a very quick change in their internal landscape, both on a physical level, but also on a cognitive mental level, which again I can understand and appreciate. But I think it has its time and its place with using a quicker method of breathing, like the breath of fire, like Wim Hof, some pranayama practices, conscious connected breath. And then some of these, like conscious connected breath, can be used to allow some emotional responses to come up through trauma. I know trauma release and trauma work is again another huge topic that breath is used within to allow, without going off on too much of a tangent, but generally we spend a lot of time in our heads. So our prefrontal cortex is online, is active. The brain, or the human brain, is doing what it's designed to do, to think, which is okay. That's what it's there for. But with certain methods of breathing, it's aiming to bypass that prefrontal cortex to
Mm.
access the mammalian brain, which is where our emotions are stored. And it's peeling back the layers of an onion. It's shifting through these elements of our brain, our central nervous system, to allow our emotions that we often suppress on a day-to-day basis to come up.
Mm.
And people can often feel sadness, anger, joy, whatever emotions they've maybe been traumatized through in the past, to actually come up to the surface. And that can only be a healthy, beneficial thing. And I think it has its place and its purpose, conducted in the right way with the right teachers and practices and settings. But again, if we're using that method of breathing to constantly access this activated uh, activated state, this sympathetic drive, again, I just wonder whether it's a healthy way to actually be using the breath to help us downregulate, to just slow all of these nervous system functions down to a level that's going to be of more benefit to us in a way, in terms of, yeah, our general levels of stress and physiological functions.
I loved what you said about that, and it leads me beautifully into my next question, where I wanted to ask you, do you think it's possible that many people are stuck in chronic stress without even realizing it?
I do. I do.
What are those subtle signs that you would say someone's nervous system is dysregulated?
Focus, attention. If people potentially are finding difficulty staying focused on a particular task, I know people enjoy having the ability to multitask, But
Mm.
I think there's something that could get lost within that ability to multitask. And I've actually been taught or guided to actually just focus on one particular task at a time and do it well and move on to the next particular task. But I think that feeds into this chronic underlying stress, is that we're unable, to a certain extent, not to generalize the whole global population, but to focus on particular tasks. And I think, unfortunately, today's society, with social media, um, with various things that we experience, is that our attention span has lessened a huge amount. And if we're able to regulate again back into this parasympathetic state, our internal landscape, for one, so there might be other symptoms, maybe elevated heart rate if you're in a more sympathetic dominant state. I mean, there's various measures that people can look at. Obviously, there's heart rate variability, there's blood pressure. You can obviously get blood tests to look at your blood work, like cortisol levels. But I would potentially just suggest, for an easier way, is to is to challenge people to just take a few moments to sit and breathe, and actually just feel for a moment. What do you feel? Do you feel tense? Do you feel tightness in the jaw, the eyebrows, the shoulders, the back? Because again, I know from when I am stressed or busy or dysregulated, I hold a lot of tension in my jaw, my brow, my back, to a certain extent. So it's difficult to pinpoint one particular physiological um, characteristic of what people can look at in terms of if they can identify if they're in a sympathetic dominant state, because there's so many elements that can feed into that. But yeah, hopefully that gives you some guidance on what to maybe look for, or to feel, or to notice.
I guess what you're saying is, like, if people listen to their body signals, it can tell them whether or not they are feeling safe or not. And I guess that also leads beautifully into what I believe is that if we listen to our body and we listen to our heart, it will lead us to find out what that is that we want to do. And I think that it will, as we can get into this calm parasympathetic state, it will essentially lead us to a calmer, more purposeful life. Um, so I guess my question for you is, like, what does living in alignment feel like in the body for you, and what you think it could feel like for another person?
Taking the time to be still, and taking the time to breathe, essentially, which is essentially what yoga was way back thousands of years ago. It was meditation and breathing before the asana came in. But if you're not a yogi, that's okay, don't worry. But on a more spiritual level, using the breath, uh, it it will allow my body to regulate, and yeah, all of these mechanisms can down regulate my heart rate, my blood pressure, my digestion, my muscular tension, aches and pains, mobility can improve, just all of these little things. But once I'm breathing and sitting, if you like, or laying down, once I feel the nervous system is regulated or down regulating, difficult to measure specifically, my mind is generally, like, my subconscious mind is able to be accessed more regularly or easier than my prefrontal cortex of my thinking mind, my conscious mind. So that's a gift, I think, that the breath allows us to drop in to the body, to down regulate the body, allow all of these things to happen physically, physiologically, but then perhaps spiritually, for want of a better words, it will allow us to just tap into what's internal, what's inside, and whether that's our truth, our purpose, our soul. For me, it's a very beautiful gift. It's a beautiful gift that using the breath will allow the internal landscape and your subconscious mind to just come to the forefront without needing to do anything other than to just sit and to breathe. And that can only be a wonderful thing.
You've literally answered my next question, which was, do you believe breathwork can create altered states of consciousness similar to psychedelics? Yes.
Yes. And that's it. Yes, it can, obviously, because they proved it. And that's where I think the allotropic school of breathing came from back in, I think, the 60s, where the teacher or the founder of this particular method of breathing was actually using psychedelics, and they were banned, and he opted, I don't know exactly how or why, but he opted to use the breath as an alternative access point into altered states of consciousness, not using psychedelics. And it does. And that's, again, partly why I feel some people can be attracted into breathwork, particularly because they want an altered state of consciousness, which again is okay. There's nothing wrong with that, because it can access things that we generally can't access on a day-to-day basis. But if it's misused or abused to a certain extent, I won't say it will have detrimental effects, but I think we're bypassing the intention of what it was first discovered for. Essentially, it can bring about altered states of consciousness. Like anything with practice, it will allow that process to happen. And for me, I can use a quicker breath, like Wim Hof, breath of fire, to drop into perhaps an altered state of consciousness a lot quicker. But personally, I found using the exhale, using like a coherence method of breathing, where the inhale and the exhale at the beginning is equal. So breathing in for 6 seconds, out for 6 seconds, and then over a period of minutes, extending both. So then again, coming back to yoga, some yogis will be quite proud of the fact that they're just breathing 1 breath per minute. And that is, for me, that can bring about, as a yogi, an internal state of bliss to a certain extent, and you can call it an altered state of consciousness again, I guess. But for me, it's not about finding this altered state of consciousness. It's just turning the volume down on my thinking mind, my inner critic, from a 10 on a stressful day down to a 2 or a 3, to begin to access the internal landscape and my subconscious mind. That's the beauty of, I think, a slower breath and using the exhale.
So how do you balance then the spiritual experiences of breath work with staying grounded in the body?
Breath work and the spiritual element can be very strongly connected and to the body. Staying grounded, I I think it takes practice, for one thing. And everyone's going to have an individual experience, just like going to a yoga class. Everyone will interpret what the teacher is saying and feeling in a very different way to everyone else. And I think initially the breath can be quite an uncomfortable thing for people to access. I actually led a breathwork session with someone yesterday, and it was their first session of a conscious connected breathwork practice where we were using the breath in quite an activating way to drop the thinking mind, to come into this mammalian emotional realm, the inner landscape. And it was quite uncomfortable for them initially, partly because of the physiological sensations that can change through tetany, like cramping, pins and needles, numbness. And it was uncomfortable for them. So we shifted the breath into a slightly different, more relaxed, down regulating pattern. So there's various techniques that we can use, something called pendulation, which is breathing in a quickened state for a period of minutes, but then dropping back to a slower rate, and just dropping up and down with how we breathe or how quickly we're breathing, just to allow us to come back to a place of safety and comfort and familiarity without suddenly taking our body and our mind into this altered state of consciousness and this extreme physiological shift where our carbon dioxide's dropping and our oxygen is dropping to a certain extent, which can result in certain tingling, numbness, sensations. So I think it does take practice, for one thing. Having a good teacher, a good guide, a good facilitator, of course. And it's a journey as well, because like anything, when we first learn to do something, it's a little bit uncomfortable, or when we first try something, it's the unknown, it's the unfamiliar, and there can be some fear around that. But just practicing, allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling, to feel the shift from tightness in the back to a relaxed back, to feeling tension in the jaw and the shoulders to no tension, to maybe doing a breathwork practice, a slow breathwork practice before bedtime to allow you to drop into sleep. And then I would probably use a more activating breath in the morning to help wake up for a few minutes. But that's another topic. But yeah, staying grounded in the body. I think it's practicing and using your awareness to just be aware and to be accepting of what may be coming up in terms of emotions, sensations in the body, and allowing the mind to just drop in and out. Because breath work and meditation, it's not about obviously turning off the mind, because that's impossible. It's just about, in a way, detaching and observing the thinking mind and just being aware of it, and the body.
What was coming up for me was actually my experience on the bike today, this morning. So I actually had surgery and had a reconstructed ACL and a meniscus repair, and I've literally just gone straight back onto the bike today after nearly 6 weeks now after surgery.
Wow,
And it was that
excellent.
it was, thank you. It was that initial feeling of like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, but that fear, as long as I was able to be consciously aware of what I was feeling and then just breathing through it and going through it, as you say, um, I was able to move it so much more than I thought I was going to. And the expectation of me not being able to move it was actually what was stopping me from moving my body. It was actually my mind that was telling me, you can't do this yet. But my body was like, you can do it, just breathe through it. So as soon as I started to breathe and come back into that, down-regulated state, I was able to move it more. And then it actually made me feel good. And I felt great after it. And I was like, wow, I've done this. And I felt, I've actually moved along the journey to recovery a bit more. So it was a nice little example there of how you can do that when the mind's just taking over, but actually our body does know, and it is intuitive, if we do listen to it and if we are able to regulate in states of stress. But I wanted to move on a little bit to your retreats in Peru that you mentioned about, and what did those experiences do for you, and how did they change your view on reality, or your view on consciousness, and yeah, essentially what happened? Like, what were you the same after it?
Whew, no. Short and the sweet answer. No, definitely not.
In a good way, though,
Yeah.
I presume.
In an incredible, beautiful, incredible way. Yeah, it was a retreat with a lot of men. Well, everyone was from the UK. We had some Irishmen, the Welshman, Englishman. There was no Scotsman, unfortunately. Otherwise, it would have been a great joke. But just people from all across the UK, which for me, living in California, it was great to connect with my fellow man. But 25 men, strangers initially, meeting in Cusco in Peru, and starting the retreat in the Sacred Valley, which is the gateway to Machu Picchu, which is a truly incredible place on this planet, connecting to Pachamama. Oh, sorry, is it Pachamama? I think it's Pachamama.
Pachamama.
Yeah, thank you, Mother Earth. Um, and the facilitators guided us through various practices like eye gazing into the left
Ooh.
eye for several minutes. I forget how long this practice was, but standing in front of a stranger, a man, for a man, is a very challenging thing. And I remember being with this one man doing this eye gazing practice. And initially my nervous system it's in fight or flight. I'm tense. My heart rate is elevated. I'm maybe sweating to a certain extent. It's very challenging to hold a gaze in the first few minutes,
Mm.
but observing, sitting, not sitting literally, but just sitting with those feelings and those sensations. We were standing up doing this practice, but just being aware of these sensations and allowing them to move through my body, and
Mm.
just to allow them to downregulate and to breathe. I ended up crying. And at the end of this practice, I hugged, or we hugged. And yeah, we're still friends to this day. This was early last year. It was actually this time last year. And another practice was a conscious connected breathwork practice, with music, and the guide, who's now a good friend that I connect with regularly, a guy called Ed. He led us through this breathwork practice in relation to our mother wound. And as men, I mean, we all have various wounds, father, mother. But this particular practice was around my mum. And going through this practice, breathing intensely for nearly 60 minutes. At the end, I was bawling my eyes out. There were just tears streaming down my face. Looking out over the mountains and the sunset behind the mountains, it was a truly magical experience I'll never forget. Um, hmm, Emotional thinking about it, talking
Oh,
about
no,
it,
no,
but
no.
It was, I mean, it was quite transformative for me, because on a completely different topic, men struggle to connect to themselves, but they struggle to connect to other men. And it's not healthy. We need connection with people for one thing, but men need connection with other men in a really profound way. And it's something that doesn't happen in today's society, unfortunately, very easily. We all wear masks. But this retreat allowed us as men to just drop these masks and drop into our bodies through dance, through movement, through the voice, shouting. We did a sweat lodge, which was, whew, if you ever have the opportunity to do a sweat lodge, please do it. It's very intense, but it's like a rebirthing process. But it was hugely transformative for me, just in terms of, I guess, the connection to myself, but the connection to men, and allowing me to hold space with other men myself. And it just reinformed my belief in just how important the breath is for us to be able to access, but to connect, because in the right way, it can bring about connection to ourselves fundamentally and foremost, but in a different setting to others in a different practice.
I loved what you said about holding space. There was a few things in there actually that I wanted to touch on. But yeah, holding space is something that I think a lot of people find difficult. Um, Not just men, women find that challenging to to hold space for men. Um, and vice versa. Some men aren't able
Mm.
to hold space for a woman, but equally for a woman to a woman or a man to a man, whatever gender you might associate yourself with. Um, I
Mm.
think for me, it's interesting that you say that when you were in this space with all these men that the eye gazing was a really difficult thing for you. And that there was a podcast that I listened to a couple of months ago by Dr. Tara Swart, who's a doctor in neuroscience. And she explained, it was actually with Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of CEO. And she explained that looking into the left eye is associated with being held as a child. So the mother would usually hold the baby in their left arm, presuming that they were right handed. And then they would look at the baby from right eye to left eye. And so that was where the bond was formed. But that's why it's so uncomfortable if we maybe haven't understood that and, done those sorts of exercises, we can feel that uncomfortableness inside coming up with the eye gazing. But it also, in turn does for me, like I've taught many years, over 16 years with children and teaching them eye contact and how to playfully do that without them realizing that they're doing it. I think, as a child, if you've gone through states where you've not been taught how to look into somebody's eyes safely, it can also create this internal constriction into your adulthood. So yeah, thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
experience, because I think a lot of people will really resonate with that.
Just following on from that,
Mm.
because essentially we're all wanting connection, whatever context, on whatever level. That's fundamentally what we're all seeking, is connection, to be heard, to be seen, to feel the connection. And I could suggest that if we don't feel connected, we're going to be dysregulated. You know, our internal, again, talking about all these physiological things, you know, cortisol, heart rate, stress, parasympathetic, sympathetic states. And it's just like coming back to like the ancient tribe, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, you know, it's that community that, yeah, is very hard to find these days in this world on some level. But you can look at it on a global scale, you can look at it on like a local scale, but then you can look at it individually on a one-to-one basis. And I think with the one-to-one basis, it that connection and eye contact, whether it's the left eye or just eye contact in general, will allow us to feel connected, and it can help us be more regulated because we feel
I
connected.
love that explanation. Thank you for sharing that. Towards the end of my podcast, I do ask this question of linking it back to someone's purpose. And so, what's one piece of advice you'd give someone who's lost and trying to find their purpose?
I would offer as a suggestion to begin a practice of sitting and breathing. You can call it meditation, you can call it breath work. I don't really mind. It's just semantics, it's just a label. But I know from talking to a lot of people that the people that need to do this the most are the people that feel that they can't do this the most. They're like, I can't meditate, I can't breathe, I can't be still. And if anything, they are exactly the people that need to do this, to bring about this down regulation, this relaxation of the body and the mind, to allow themselves the time and the space to just tap in to that intuition, their innate knowing of what their journey is, what their truth is, what their soul is screaming out to do, to feel. And for me, yes, breathing is the key element. And yeah, using the exhale to gain access to all of these things on a spiritual, cognitive level, as a physio, on a physical level. It's breathing, and it's the exhale, I feel, that will add a lot of benefit to people. And perhaps something to bear in mind, again, like any practice at the beginning, it's difficult, it's hard, it's challenging. But like with anything as well, persistence and consistency are the things that will change someone's life. You don't run a marathon within a week of training. You don't become a bodybuilder after 6 weeks of training. We're talking months and years of consistency. And when I first did my yoga teacher training in 2017, 16, and my teacher said to me I had to meditate for 20 minutes every day, it was difficult. I struggled, but I wanted to listen to what she was offering me, to be guided, and I did this practice, and it's honestly changed me as a person, but it's changed my life. And it's all about breathing. And I know James Nestor's book Breath has been an access point for millions around the world, which is amazing. So however people want to access the breath is okay. And it's just like my yoga teacher used to say, there's no bad yoga. Any yoga is good yoga. Any breathing is good. And I know that might contradict most of what I've just said in terms of breathing quickly or slowly. But if people can use maybe Wim Hof to access the breath and to have an altered state of consciousness, that's fine. But again, it's the consistency. Just like eating pizza every day is not good for us, doing rapid rate of breathing every day for, again, I wouldn't suggest that's probably good for us in a way.
For me, breath work was really difficult at the beginning, and more meditation for me was really, really challenging. I remember trying it and was like, I can't sit still for a minute. I can't sit still for 10 minutes. And sometimes I do meditations for 2 hours and I'm just sat there, in this altered state of consciousness and listening to what my inner voice is telling me. But it started, as you said, from a place of willingness, openness to try, starting small and gradually getting more and more. Just like, as you're doing any sort of exercise for rehab, you there's me wanting to get on the bike at 3 weeks, and it was a hard no. But at 6 weeks, yeah, with these steps that you take, like breathing for a minute and then maybe breathing for 2 minutes next time, or even after 2 weeks, it does become a practice. Thank you for explaining that. That was really beautifully said. I would love to ask, like, where can people find out more about you and some of the amazing work that you're doing, and what offerings are you offering at the moment?
Thank you. Primarily at the moment, I'm just on Instagram, soon to be coming onto YouTube with some videos and content. And my handle, my tag name is Breath Mobility. Breath Mobility, one word. And yeah, I have my page on there, which you can access and book a free 15-minute sort of consultation where we can just discuss what you may need or want. And then I have a couple of different breathwork sessions that I'm offering. One is a purely a conscious connected breathwork practice of 70 minutes where we'll breathe and just allow the body to come into various levels of awareness and different states. And then my real focus is using the breath to shift the physical mobility within the body. So I have a different session where I use the breath with mobility exercises and specific movements depending on what people may be struggling with, their back, their hips, or their shoulders, neck. So that's kind of a hybrid session that I'm offering. And I'm soon to be launching a program focused around the back and the neck specifically, which is a longer 6-week program at this point that I'm launching within the next few weeks. And then I'm going to be working on hosting personal intensive retreats on a one-to-one basis, or just a small group format, just to allow a little bit more of a personalized experience. And then, yeah, I will be launching a book at some point relatively soon, and we'll see where the journey takes me.
How exciting. I can't wait to read this book. So yeah, be sure to check out the show notes to find James if you'd like to work with him one-to-one, and go and find him on the socials there. And please, could you tell us what's one takeaway that you want the listener to leave with today before we part?
I think probably the biggest thing is just allow yourself a couple of minutes a day to just be still and to focus your attention on breathing. And then once you've allowed yourself just to settle after a minute or two, just focus on the exhale and use the exhale to just elongate and allow it to just be a little bit longer than your inhale. And even if you do that for 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes a day, I'm not going to guarantee that it will change things for you, but I can strongly suggest that you will feel a lot different if you just sit and breathe for 3 to 5 minutes a day, either at the beginning or the end of the day. And from there, things may change for you.
Thank you so much for sharing your voice and your wisdom. And it's honestly been a pleasure to have you on this episode. Thank you so much, James. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and comment below your thoughts on your experiences from this podcast, and share your voice. I love reading all of your comments and replying to them. So thank you again, James. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you.